All these episodes of the flight plan, we're talking about different brands and different agencies that we work with just for what we've chosen. We don't have any sponsorship from any of these agencies or companies. So when we talk about DGI, Pilot Institute, any of those, we are not sponsored by any of them at this time. Now, if anybody like Greg from Pilot Institute wants to sponsor us, we'd love to be able to have that conversation because we love Pilot Institute and we love all the products that we use. That's why we wanted to share them with you. But it is your decision as a consumer of where you want to go with what you want to purchase, and we will try and do our best to steer you towards a direction to get you started on your research. And now we start the flight plan. Hi, my name is Christopher, and welcome back to another episode of The Flight Plan. Today, we're going to have our wonderful time of working with rules, regulations, and what you really should have for being in business as a drone pilot.
So going into drones, how much did you know?
How much did I know about going into it?
Yeah, like rules and all.
When I first was flying the drones, the rules hadn't been fully established yet. We had a very gray water concept. Part 107 pilots had pretty much just came out for what you needed to do to become a Part 107 pilot. And as a recreational pilot, it was like the Wild West when I did the startup. Of course, I bought a drone where it had like 5.5 minutes of flight time, and it could only go about 150 feet away from the controller before it lost signal. So it really wasn't that big of a deal when you couldn't be able to go very far. But as time progressed and more companies got better in their creating of flights and batteries and how the drones could be used, it became very quickly where you could easily go beyond the visual line of sight and get up past 400 feet for your elevation. So when I started getting into the professional side is when I really started getting into the rules. And being a person who wanted to be a pilot beforehand really allowed me to see all the rules before I really got into the drone world.
Concrete.
Hard concrete, do not pass go, okay. Number one, always stay within the visual line of sight of the drone. What that means is when you are looking at the drone, you can visually see it. And not just, it's a little tiny speck off in the, like you can see that it's a drone. That's high-end rule number one. High-end rule number two, if you are not in a controlled airspace, do not fly higher than 400 feet above the ground. And this goes by above the ground of wherever your drone is. So if you're on top of a hill and you take off, you can be 400 feet above the hill. But if you're going to fly down the mountainside or the valley side of the hill, you have to stay 400 feet above that portion of ground, not just from where you took off from. And then the other big thing is when you're working with your drone, stay out of controlled airspace unless you have permission to be there. The only people that should have permission to be there are people with waivers and people who have a Part 107 license with a Lance approval for that area, which is another form of a waiver for the commercial side. I have to know all the rules. So I actually will say I do know all of the current rules that are in place because as a Part 107 pilot, we are responsible to be able to be updated on every rule and regulation change. If we don't, we can put our own license at risk. So we get constant updates from the FAA, and also we have to look at FCC communication regulations if we're doing special things with radios and stuff. So we have to keep track of both regulations as a pilot. For us, the newer rules, some of them kind of laxed in their ability and others have increased in their ability. One of the things that laxed was you used to be able to not be able to fly after dark for any reason unless you had a specific waiver. They have now changed it to where it's a part of the 107 license, but you are required to have certain additional equipment on your drone. One of those is you have to have a 3-mile strobe light. Not one of those little strobe lights you can go run down to Walmart and buy that just flashes. These are very specific, and they have to be 3-mile rated. And be careful if you're on Amazon. There are some people that say it's a 3-mile strobe, and it's really not. You got to make sure you're getting a certified 3-mile visibility light. They aren't that expensive for the certified ones. The one that I have for my big drone was $35. And it's its own independent battery source, so it runs separate from what the drone is. And it's lightweight, so it doesn't really affect the flight time too much. I lose about 2 minutes of flight on my battery. But you have to have one of those, and you have to have the regular lights that come with the drone. So you have your red and your greens to show which direction that it's flying. There are still certain regulations, like you cannot fly above a certain altitude, even if you have Lance approval at night, fly out the distance from an airport. So just because the fact that you think these people are flying 65, 85, 120 knots ground speed, they're not going to see that drone a mile out. Even with the 3-mile light, they're going to see a flash, and pretty quickly they're going to be right on top of it. So there's still some regulations of what you would need to be in an airport for night operations. And some of the other stuff, our newest thing is the non-commercial side. It's called Trust. This is every recreational pilot has to go through the Trust program now in order to fly a drone at all. That's to be able to get a lot of the basic rules that every single person can be able to say, yes, I understand I cannot fly over 400 feet. I'm not going to fly beyond the visual line of sight. You can't fly over crowds of people. You can't be able to pace cars on roads. Like there's a lot of different little things to work with. A very good question on the insurance. It goes down to what are you going to do with it. So if you're a recreational pilot, you don't have to have millions of dollars of coverage just to fly the drone. Is it a good idea to have the insurance? Absolutely it is. Things happen. I mean, you can walk into someone's house, trip, fall, and that's why you want to have homeowners insurance, so that way you can cover people coming in and tripping over your rug or whatever you have. A drone, you're literally taking an object and you're putting it in the air. A drone, especially a quadcopter drone, acts just like a helicopter, except for it has 4 blades instead of 1. There's advantages and disadvantages for it. Number 1 of the advantage is you've got more blades pushing the air to lift the quadcopter up. The disadvantage is if one of those goes out, the drone becomes uncontrollable and it flips and dives and goes off into who knows where. And if it hits somebody, you as a drone pilot are responsible for any injuries that person sustains. Even if you didn't control the drone to do that, you're still in control of the vehicle. So you are taking an object in the air. One of the things that we also talk about, helicopters and quadcopters, all they're doing is beating the air into submission to lift those objects up. Once it stops beating that air into submission, gravity takes over very quickly, and they will fall out of the sky. That's why you can't fly over crowds of people, because if you've got a heavy drone, what we talked about in the previous episode, the big Mavic, if that came falling out of the sky and hit somebody, you could actually kill somebody with that much weight going that fast at terminal velocity. If you have an uncontrolled flight, like I said, one motor goes out and it's zigzagging around, it can increase its speed past just what we call terminal velocity of it falling, and it can cause even more damage. So just by adding prop guards doesn't make that drone safe. That's why there's a weight limit for what you can do over people. That's why we showed the little baby one that was safe for flying over people, because it's not just completely cased in a cage. Its physical weight is deemed light enough that if it goes at terminal velocity, it's not deadly. It'll still hurt, and you can still cause serious injury with it, but it becomes a safer unit to be able to fly. As a commercial pilot, you have to have insurance. No different than a commercial photographer. We have all the equipment for photography, lights, tripods, cables, all that stuff. If we don't have insurance, someone sues us, we're out. And lawsuits can be millions of dollars for injuries. So not all insurance companies, especially the photography insurance companies, cover drones. We use one that we have an additional rider that we had to put on there. So in addition to our photography insurance for my company, we have to have a drone addition that we have to pay extra for, and that covers specifically the drone issues. If someone were to be hurt by it, all those kind of things. Not a lot of insurances will cover the equipment for the drone just because of how pricey they are, whereas some photography insurance will cover your equipment as well if it gets damaged for whatever reason. So you kind of got to look into those. And not every company will do drone insurance. If you already have insurance for a business, check with those people already. Say, hey, I want to start up drones. What do I need for a drone rider? And they might say, oh, we don't cover that because it's expensive. I mean, we're talking millions of dollar lawsuits of people. And if you're flying it recreationally, like I said, if you hit somebody with it, you're still on the hook for it, whether or not you purposely hit them or not. I know it's like a political answer, but you need it, you don't need it, but yet you do need it.
It's wise.
Yeah.
It's wise to have it.
That's why we have it.
It's better to have it and not use it rather than need it and not have it.
Well, you don't have to put this part in the episode, but for our insurance, we have a $2 million coverage as a photography side, a $5 million rider on the drone. Because of how much damage it can cause, much more damage that it can cause. If we'll just say I'm using the Avata, because typically I'd use the Avata if I was around people and I'm flying near, not as much the Mavic unless I'm flying like directly over me. If I'm using the Avata and it goes out of control and it hits somebody, you can knock them unconscious. Family can sue for up to $2.5 million. Because they've been knocked unconscious. Yeah, let's not do that. If a softbox light falls on somebody, you could crack their skull open. But you didn't knock them unconscious. So, it's all in there. And just how much time you're in the air versus on the ground. Big things like that. But, alright, what's your next question?
Kind of hoping I would get something off of that one. I'm not.
So the FAA has multiple ways that we work with the rules. Number one, we have to take our initial examination test. As we talked about before, to get your Part 107 license, you should go through a class. Many different organizations. I use Pilot Institute. That's my favorite one to go through, just because Greg and the team there are phenomenal with explaining how everything goes. But for the continuing up, we have to not only take a reoccurring exam every 2 years, we have to hold our Part 107 license with us all the time, especially when we're flying. All of our drones have remote ID systems to it. So if we have a deviation from our regulations, it can actually be pinged and tracked and then linked back to us. So the FAA can be able to say, oh, well, for instance, there was an issue, I believe it was last summer in California. There was slurry bombers flying the fires in California. And somebody thought, I'm going to put my drone in the air and get some footage so I can sell it to the media or whatever they were trying to do. Well, they got in the way of one of the slurry bombers, and it got embedded. The drone got embedded into the wing of the aircraft. And they knew they struck something because as they were flying, they heard it. But it didn't affect any of the controls at that moment. Because they knew they struck something, once they finished that slurry run, they had to take the plane out of service. And because at the time they were limited on resources, that was taking away slurry runs. So that drone impact actually impacted the fire system and putting slurry in front of the fire. Once they landed it, got out, they see the drone was embedded in there. They were able to retrieve the drone, find the ID chip that's inside the drone, and on it's essentially its VIN number for the drone, its identifier, and they submit it to the FAA. The FAA found them and fined them for the improper use of the drone, and they lost any ability to ever get a Part 107 license because of it. So I don't know where else it went, if it went to more court system after that, but they got a hefty fine. I believe it starts at $200,000 fine. Yeah, for impeding a manned aircraft. It could have been a lot worse. This slurry bomber was a prop bomber. We have those jet bombers that come through. If that drone went into a jet engine, the plane could have easily crashed. And if it hit the prop correctly, it could have crashed this one too. Or worse, it could have gone through the windshield of the aircraft and it could have killed somebody inside of there. So these are serious offenses that there's reasons why we have regulations out there. People think, oh, I'm fine. Oh, I'm fine. Think about it this way. You're driving in your car at 65 miles an hour. And there is a bird, just a regular old bird, flying from the road. When do you see that bird? Right when it's at your windshield. Same thing with drones versus planes. You don't see the drone until it's in your windshield. And then it's too late. So there's a lot of regulations out there because we're trying to keep everybody safe in the skies. And that's only one of many stories. I mean, you search online, you find within 5 seconds, you can find drone versus plane stories, more recent, like as of yesterday kind of stories. They're constant. There was a plane that had to make an emergency landing because upon takeoff, he hit a drone. And he had to circle around and make an emergency landing. It was a passenger plane. Yeah. So not only did that drone cause problems to the airplane, I don't think it was a jumbo jet. I believe it was a CRJ. It put 80 plus people's lives at risk just because they wanted to fly and get some footage. Yeah. Yep. One of the big issues that we had was, as I said, when I got into drone flying, it was the Wild West. We didn't have a lot of regulations that we had to follow. We just had the guidelines of what we need to do. Register your aircraft, and then you could go fly recreationally and just stay under the things. Back then, it was okay because the limitations of the aircraft wouldn't allow you to really break those. DJI Mavic 3, it has the capability of going up to 1,500 feet off the ground before it runs low on battery and has to come back. You can go out 3 miles and still have the battery to come back. So when you're well past visual line of sight at 3 miles. Once those drones caught up to it, it's put the FAA and the regulations behind the 8 ball very quickly. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have so many issues and why it's so easy just to go down to the store and buy a drone.
You want to walk us through your pre-flight process with checking for airspace thingies?
Look around, no aircraft, good to go. I'm just joking. Sadly, some people think about that. They say, I don't see anything I can go. Just because it looks clear doesn't mean that it is clear. First thing that I do is there is multiple apps out there that you can be able to use to check your airspace. I forget the name of mine every time. I use air control is what I use. So with air control, you can be able to have either on your phone or on the computer. That's one of the reasons why I like using it. And it shows you if there is any lance zones. These are only the lance zones. And lance, we'll talk about that on a later episode of how to get lance. But this is to get flight permission to fly in controlled airspace. This goes through FAA processors and make sure that you're flying in a safe manner. Then I go and check, before I even take the flight, before I even gone out to the location, I check the FAA's NOTAMs. This is Notice to All Airmen. And those NOTAMs will tell me, I can put in my GPS or even a physical address that they'll let me know, is there a flight restriction for the area? Any TFRs, temporary flight restrictions, you cannot fly in TFRs. We'll give you a perfect for instance. This weekend we have the World Cup going to be over in Kansas City. From the arena out, I want to say it's like 50 miles out, there is a TFR that nobody is allowed to fly in that area unless you have explicit permission to do so. So there's helicopters are going to be flying in there for the broadcasting. There's going to be commercial air traffic that will be allowed to go in there to go to the airport, because that TFR does extend out to the airport's controlled airspace. So they've already given waivers and clearances for those. But anything that hasn't gone through the proper channels cannot fly there. If a TFR is active, unless you have some very specific reason why you have to be flying in that TFR, you will not get permission to fly there. For instance, there was drones used at the U.S. Olympics. Only the pilots that were flying those drones were allowed clearance in those TFRs, because of they were there at the Olympics filming the Olympics. If any other drone was in the area, you're not allowed to be there. So I go through, check to make sure there's no TFR for the area that I'm going to be working. And I've actually had times where I had schedules to go fly something and a TFR popped up and I couldn't fly the mission, had to reschedule it, do it again later. Then when I get there, I double check to make sure that I'm not in a Lance authorization zone. Usually I've already checked that well before I get out there so I can make sure that my airspace is clear. Next, I activate ADSB information. This is the same system that they use for all commercial, military, and private aircraft, manned aircraft. They have to have a transponder on their aircraft that sends out their GPS data and their height and everything. So we have an ADSB tracker. Something simple like flight radar is sufficient to be able to do this. You can be able to then get a link into their network and see where all the airplanes are traveling around the area. This is my double check for it. If I'm flying in an airspace or near an airport, I go and look for their frequency for that airport, and I put that on one of my radio scanners so I can listen to make sure that there is going to be nobody in my airspace. One of the things that we bring up is like, it's not my airspace by ownership, it's my airspace by responsibility. So when I say I'm making sure my airspace is cleared, I'm not owning the airspace. I'm being responsible for the space I'm taking up with my aircraft. So before someone gets on the comments and says, you don't own the air, I know I don't. But I am responsible to be safe in that section. So that's when I say my airspace. After that, I then double check that my weather conditions are correct for flying, wind speeds well within my range of what I can fly, that there's no wind shear at higher altitudes. You can get these through different apps. You can, well, like myself, have a weather station mounted to the vehicle so I can get my ground speed. Knowing what's going on the ground helps even more up in the air as well. After all that, I double check the drone itself. I physically make sure that the drone is not damaged, there's no damage to the battery, everything's fully charged, the memory cards are cleared, ready to go for takeoff. And then I set everything up. After my visual inspection of making sure all the blades have no cracks in them, I can then deem that my aircraft is safe to fly. Once I've done that, I can be able to take off, and I let my aircraft take off and hover for about 10 to 15 seconds over my helipad just to make sure that there is nothing wrong with the drone. You can tell pretty easily, especially if you're flying the same drone over and over, that it's doing something it's not supposed to do. If you take off and you hover and all of a sudden it starts tipping to one side, you know something's not right. You bring it down, recalibrate it, and start again. It's better to know that 2 feet off the ground than 300 feet off the ground. And then I go on and fly my mission and do whatever needs to be done, take the pictures, videos, all that kind of stuff, bring it back. One of the other things is people think, oh, I have a 46-minute flight time, so I can be in the air 46 minutes. You have a 46-minute battery time on optimal conditions. Run that down to 30 minutes. Understand that once you hit 20%, bring your drone back. Some controllers, like my DJI controller, it actually alerts me when I'm at 20%, and it gives me a prompt of, do you want me to bring the drone back or not? I always hit no because I'm just finishing up whatever I'm doing, just to get that last picture or video that I'm just finishing, and then I bring the drone back, and I'm on the ground before I even hit 15% left on my battery. This is to ensure that I don't run out of battery on the way back, because if you're flying back from your point, even though you can physically see it, if it runs out of battery, it runs out of battery. Some drones, like my DJI for the Mavic, does have an auto land feature, so it calculates how much percentage of battery it needs to get back to where it's supposed to go. The problem with that is, if it's coming back on a headwind, it's going to kill the battery faster, and it will run out of battery before it makes it back, even on its safety protocol. So that's why you don't go down that low on your battery. Once it starts yelling at you, just bring it back. And that's pretty much the system. You just run and fly the drone. Yeah. But if you do it right, you do it well, the FAA won't get mad at you. Just like anything with the federal government. Do it right, do it well, and they won't get mad at you. Mostly. I mean, bottom line, when you're working with the drone system, the regulations that are in place are there for a reason. These aren't just willy-nilly to make way where you can't have any fun. You can have a lot of fun with drones. Even flying in a legal manner, you can have a lot of fun. You can do some amazing stuff with drones. One of the things that we see right now, big boys running around the US. People are flying drones so close to the big boy that the big boy's hitting them. Like, you've got a wider, a telephoto lens on most of these drones. You don't have to be right in front of the locomotive to get photos right in front of the locomotive. You can be up away 150 feet and still get better views than if you were standing on the ground right next to the train. Not only that, that's a big train. You don't need to be right next to it. It's a big train. Best thing to always do, use common sense. Really, most of the regulations are out there because it's a common sense thing. Don't fly near airports. Why? You don't want to hit an engine of an aircraft. When a bird, a third of the weight of a drone, can shut down a jet engine, a drone can do a ton more damage than that bird can do. So if a bird can bring down a plane, your drone can easily bring down a plane. And the safer that you are, the better that the regulations will be for us for flying. and the more opportunities we will get in the future. If we keep breaking the rules, we're going to lose out on so much that we can well do. I mean, they're bringing in a new part called Part 108. Right now, the guideline of them building Part 108 is this is for the package delivery drones, everything going beyond visual line of sight. What regulatory aspects do we have to be able to allow for package deliveries? How far out can they go without actually being visually observed? How much weight are they legally able to carry? What materials are going to be restricted from those package drones? So they've got a lot of work that they're still doing on that Part 108. We're still a ways from them getting that out. But when that comes up, it will actually change regulations in Part 107 as well, because there will be some things that Part 107 will cover that Part 108 will cover better. And then they will take that and mirror it back over and update our Part 107 flights. It could be better, it could be worse. We could get more abilities, or we could get more freedoms taken away because no one can follow the rules. So, big thing, follow the rules, follow the regulations that are set forth by the FAA, the FCC, the NTSB. I could go through all the alphabet companies and for an hour of which ones we need to go through. And be safe. The better that we are, the better we're going to get our systems for. And I think that's all the time we have for this episode. Next time, I think we got some more fun stuff, not just rules, regulations, and being the bum of the party and reading from the, the system. We don't have to do that next time. I think we got some fun stuff on that. But until next time, my name is Christopher, and we're here on The Flight Plan.